It has been a breezy night out here. Got woken up by wind about 3-4 o'clock. Coffee number 3, and then it's time to get going. That is the CDT footpath right there. I've noticed this section has a lot of the kind of PCT, AT style campsites right on trail, and I've just been using those since I've been hiking late. It is interesting. This section has a few marked campsites and things, but for most of the CDT, it's just been dispersed. And I would say the majority of my sites have been ones that nobody's used anytime recently. I am getting wimpy in my old age. A little bit of cold wind, and I've been delaying get out of the tent for like 20 minutes. So I'm descending down the south side of Jack's Peak. Could have made the water cache last night, but I don't like camping too close to roads and things like that. And this way I can build up some thirst before I get there. This is the last gasp of altitude on this trail. After this, it goes low and stays low. I think the trail is in the 5K range for the remainder. It's also starting to look like I may avoid any more precipitation for the remainder of this. The 7-day forecast is still just kind of showing the same. It is supposed to get below freezing over the weekend at night, but mid to high 20s is really no big deal, especially now that I have the air mattress. Today is just going to be get as many miles in as I can. Tomorrow should be Lordsburg, which is going to cause a little bit of a blip in my mileage. If I do another 20 today, I'll only have like 13 into Lordsburg, which is fine. I mean, I'm going to have to buy and repackage my resupply, so, and my battery could probably use a little topping up, so no matter what, I'm going to get delayed a little bit. And with it getting dark so early, it'll work out. My plan is still to stay at the Econo Lodge tomorrow and then leave early-ish the following day and just book it for the border. I am still hoping to finish around the 10th or the 11th, depending how things go. I mean, days like yesterday, even when the trail's not going up or down that much, there are times when it's slow. You know, you get all these little rocks and things that means I have to go a little slower or risk twisting an ankle. Versus if I have slightly upsloping dirt, I can actually usually move a lot faster on that. I'm trying very hard not to spend all day just thinking about making XYZ miles and finishing, but that is kind of hard, especially yesterday. I was down in the trees and those ravines and things for most of the day, so it was a little bit samey. I'm hoping for more open desert floor, you know, wider open, better views up ahead. More exciting today, there is a solar well near the trail, which comments talk about it having little salamanders or axolotls in it. So I am going to visit that, at the very least to get some pictures and footage for taters. The finish itself is seemingly fairly well handled at the moment. I had a couple of different people come out of the woodworks offering rides. There is somebody who can come get me and get me to Las Cruces and even has a high clearance vehicle. So apparently the road out to Crazy Cooks can be a little rough. So general plan is they come pick me up, take me to Las Cruces, I get a rental car, and then I'll have about a 7 or 8 hour drive to get up to where my parents can meet me. I'll stay with them for a day or two. I gotta triage all the gear, jam it back in the Jeep, and then it is a 2-day drive, well, a day and change, back to Southern California. It's normally a bit of a mess coming back into town and having to pack away all the things and rearrange storage and everything like that. This year we don't have the van to turn over, so that'll be a little easier. And one of the big things I'm going to need to get done while off trail is just to kind of reorganize and pare down the outdoor gear. Granted, by the time I make it back, I'm only going to be sitting around for 10 days or so, if that. And then we have a trip to Socorro. It's one of those scuba diving trips that we plan every couple of years. So that's exciting. At the moment, I kind of just want to crawl in a hole for a little while. And then, of course, once we get back from that, it's only another week or two until the wilderness class starts, which will have its own level of chaos. And then as soon as the 10-week wilderness class is over, I am back on the road. I don't have flights booked or anything yet, but I am feeling fairly confident in the westbound American Discovery Trail hike. Since going east, I would have to deal with snow in the Sierra. And unless we have a low snow year, that would delay me by at least an extra month. Going westbound, there's always a chance that I won't make it over the Sierra before the fall winter storms come in. But generally, snow in the Sierra is easier to deal with in the fall than it is in the spring, in my experience. If I make it all the way to San Francisco, getting back will be easy because there are trains and things that run along the West Coast. And even if I don't, but I make it out into the western states, that'll probably put me close enough where Jen could conceivably meet me at the end. And the plan will be she joins me for spring break, which will be a bit of a trick being off one of the major trails, but I mean, hey, we made it work in Alabama. And then for her summer, she'll be with me the entire time. So as far as video coverage, I would expect next year to be a little better than this year. I mean, this year I was out March until December, but there were a couple of gaps in the middle. We'll see on this one, but I'm anticipating less gaps. It's kind of a Eastern Continental Trail style big throw with the added challenge of it's not so far south where the start is easier to do in winter. I am going to do everything I can to set myself up for being able to go coast to coast. It just depends what complications happen. Similar to the CDT, I would have made some reasonable semblance last year if I hadn't gotten sick twice. But can't control things, and I mean, like the injury this year, it was just such a random event out of nowhere. I am expecting the walking to be a little easier and the miles to be a little more consistent next year, just based on my research. But who knows, right? And of course, I am in the background also starting to plan things for the paddling the Yukon the following year. And I have this whole Word document filled with all these various adventures that I've heard about that seem appealing. But we really have more to do than we have time or money for. When I was on the ECT, I had kind of fixated on the National Scenic Trail 11 as the post Triple Crown goal. Problem is, I keep finding cool adventures like the Mississippi or the Grand Enchantment or things like that aren't on that list. And a couple of things on that list I'm going to do them, like, not just Trace, but that's something like a 400-mile road walk with 65 miles of trail. Basically anything under 500 miles, I kind of have in a file of things where if I have an open gap, I'll jump over and do that. We kind of plan things now around Jen's summer, that being, the big adventure. And then, stuff like Arizona Trail, Grand Enchantment, etc. Those are the early season, late season fill-in hikes. Because the advantage of having no home to go back to is doesn't make much sense to just be sitting around town unless I've got commitments there. I do still keep my ear to the ground as far as like odd jobs for the off season. They just have to be things that don't interfere with Jen and I being together, since we're apart for such a big chunk of the year, and they have to make sense. The couple of things that I've seriously looked at, by the time you factor in, gas, vehicle wear, stuff like that, there's no economic benefit to doing it, basically. And if it was something that seemed like it was, a cool experience, that's not a problem. If I could find a scuba-related job that seemed promising, I would do that. And as long as I could at least, break even on the expenses, that would be worth it. But if I'm just working at REI or something, I'm not feeling like doing that effectively like a volunteer. At this point, our lifestyle is just kind of tuned to doing this sort of thing. And unless we undo that, it doesn't really make sense to back off. And the support we get through YouTube has been very helpful as far as offsetting costs. We're never going to be, making a profit hiking or anything, but it adds up. And welcome to the lowlands. My hiker hunger has also kind of kicked into high gear sometime during the blacks, which, doing the math from Abiquiu, that probably makes sense. You get hungrier almost immediately because, you're exerting all day. It's like you go to the gym and you work out, you're going to be hungry afterwards. But the actual, what I would call hiker hunger, where you're just starving, it's hard to be filled up, you're exhausted because you're always feeling hungry and it's hard to just get down all the bars and other stuff. That doesn't hit for like 500 or 700 miles. Those wonderful people in Silver City fed me 2 huge meals and a large meal, and each time it was enough, but the only time I was stuffed, I ate 3 breakfast burritos within, like an hour and a half. The good news is when I come off trail, at least for me, the extreme hunger goes away pretty quick. I'll be starving for the first couple of days, and then things kind of go back to normal. Though I do crave veggies and all the stuff I'm not able to get normally out here. However, no matter what I've tried, I always put on weight coming off the trail. Mostly because you slim down so extremely. This year, not as much because that effect didn't happen on the Mississippi. But you look at me, like when I finished the PCT versus when I started the ECT, or after the ECT and when I started the CDT. Even though it's just a couple of months, there's always a noticeable change. There has been a debate over the last however many years online, due to a few kind of questionable articles I've seen published, about whether through hiking is just super unhealthy. Somebody will post about how they did XYZ hike, and then their doctor said their entire body was inflamed and they had all these issues, etc. That hasn't been my experience, but I also think I try harder to kind of maintain a balanced dish diet, lots of staples, things like that. Anytime I go into town, veggies, salad, etc. tends to be what I'm prioritizing. Versus I've seen people bragging about how their breakfast is Pop-Tarts with frosting on the first part of the AT. For me, other than the post-trail malaise, mental struggles, there is an adjustment coming off. I mean, I'm used to walking every day, and once I'm off my feet for about a week, it's not that I'm not still in hiking shape, but there's a noticeable kind of difference. When I've been at my parents' and tried to go hiking afterwards, my feet, my knees just kind of felt different after about a week. Then eventually, obviously, the calluses will wear off. The salt water usually does a really good job of that, unfortunately. And that pretty much resets to zero by the next big through hike. I'm hoping this year I can do a little better job of just kind of maintenance hikes, since one of the big priorities is going to be trying a few new pairs of shoes, hoping something works so I can get away from this abusive relationship with ultras, where I keep having to throw piles of money at them just to get through a dinky 300 miles. And I've talked about this before, but when I finished my first, real through hike on the PCT, I was in rough shape then. You know, I was limping for a while, stuff like that. When I finished the ECT, my mother kept commenting how I seemed basically, you know, normal, a little shaggy, but there wasn't that big health thing that followed my first. And when I came off the CDT, I was obviously sick, but I wasn't limping or anything like that. Granted, by the time I got to my parents after the PCT, I actually had planar warts that were getting kind of painful, which I didn't manage to diagnose until I started the ECT, and then didn't manage to cure for like 2 months or something ridiculous. The amount of pain I was in through Florida and parts of Alabama were just ridiculous. But can't sweat the small stuff, right? You let something like the fact your foot is causing extreme pain every step stop you, you're gonna let anything stop you. It's funny, I usually end up when I meet non-hikers out here, if they're interested in the hikes, etc., I tell stories, and then at the end they ask what my trail name is. When I say masochist, they usually crack up and say, oh yeah, that's appropriate. There's been all sorts of camping further down here. I'd been a little more motivated. Could have got down here, but then I would have missed the views. Man, New Mexico spends money on trailheads. Not on bathrooms for trailheads, but on the parking lots at least. And here we go, the next cache. That apparently has snacks. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have got my hopes up. Actually, I had 2 people come by while I was sitting there drinking out of the cache. And it looks like this section of trail has been highly maintained. Not that the part up to Burrow was that bad. Okay, this is supposed to be the salamander / axolotl area. Well, that is an aquatic creature of sorts. Sadly, while the far out comments mentioned salamanders or axolotls, all I found was a dead baby pig and some water bugs. Well, I pulled out the baby pig, so at least future people will have better water, but looks like this is the reservoir tank, and it looks like there's no way to actually get water out. Honestly, I don't even really need the water that bad. I was going to drink some, but more came out here just to hopefully get cute critter pictures for taters. Oh well. It's like being on the southern bit of the PCT. So I was camped up there last night. And now this is my life. So incidentally, that's the same road leaving Silver. So if you're in a whole heck of a lot of hurry to finish, you can just road walk and avoid all this, silly, pretty trail that I've been on for the last couple of days. Getting spoiled out here. Bacon-infused water and caches at every road. This has been just downright cruisy. If I have this for another 100 miles, maybe I can actually make up some time after Lordsburg. Hey, cool. Old mine. Oh, I am tempted to start hopping fences and looking around. Oh well. This is a pretty damn extensive complex of structures and old foundations and things. And there is absolutely nothing on Far Out about it. It's funny, I guess I expected more solar wells to be functional. This is the co-op windmill. They were such a thing on the AZT and the Get, yet here there's so many that, I mean, that panel doesn't look that old, and yet nothing's flowing. Okay, theoretically, there should be water up here. This is my last water source to Lordsburg, so I'm going to fill up and then keep stumbling along a little longer, I think. Okay, not even that bad of water, and check this out. Good water source. Okay, 3 liters of water on my back. I was gonna push it maybe another 5 miles or so. However, looking ahead, it seems like in another 2 miles, it turns into another one of those 6-mile segments just going across the field following posts. And that tends to be kind of a pain in the dark. It's fine. I'm 14 miles from Lordsburg right now. I can obviously make that in the morning. I think I may go right down 2.3 miles down. There's a gate where public land turns, well, where public land ends. And there's supposedly a campsite in the area. There's been plenty of areas I can camp right around here, but there are cow plops in every spot. I am kind of bummed that the terrain and trail from this morning gave way to roads and such, but oh well, probably a bit much to ask to have it be that nice for the last 100. Speaking of which, I am now officially under 100 miles to the terminus, which is both really close and right at the moment feels like still quite a ways away. I just can't seem to stop failing horribly at not thinking about the end here. And I assume that's probably Lordsburg. Holy crap. That is different. So much for good camping, but this will work. I'm not quite in a wash. I'm in a little rise in between, not much protection, and there's a fair amount of wind. I am not going to screw with the fly tonight. Doesn't seem to be much point with it being this dry. So tomorrow into Lordsburg, should be about 12 some miles, get a bunch of food, probably spend the night, and I am looking forward to finishing home sweet home.